Yeah.
Yeah.
We're doing this.
Yeah, we're doing it live. Welcome back, Internet. We are playing.
Hi.
Amanda's still here.
Much to your chagrin, apparently.
Yeah.
You can talk about space all you want. You don't need my cute and peppy interjections about how much I don't know about space. Look at that thing. You're building a giant old dildo. Original.
Yeah, learning from our lessons from the last time, I'm building another space plane, and I figured out enough, I think, to make it work. So we're going to... I also changed up some things because the last one had the rocket engines on the outside engines, yes, and the jet engines on the inside, and that made it very prone to when I take off, to me taking off, resulting in the jet engines crashing to the runway and breaking off.
To flipping the fuck out, quite literally.
Well, the jet engines, so I also figured out a lot of stuff about center of mass, center of lift. I actually ended up looking at a lot of pictures of space planes and realized I was doing the wings very wrong. And I made much bigger wings that sweep much farther back, and then added some things to the front for stability. I also put a spotlight underneath it because it's very helpful when you're landing at night because it lets you know where the fuck the ground is. And now a new feature that we get somewhere, I have a million parts, is a docking port, because we are going to eventually dock this to a space station. And I also I set up my action groups again. I have the jet engines on action group 1, the rocket engines on action group 2, and the air intakes on action group 3, and I added a fourth one because I realized when I was doing other testing, if I just use the standard brakes, that turns the brakes on all the landing gear and results in the plane doing a stoppie, which is bad because it will crash one of its wings into the ground every time.
Despite how cute it sounds.
Yeah, so I set up a fourth action group that only activates brakes on the rear wheels and sets up the spoilers on the wings. So it doesn't stop as fast, but it will and this plane has a lot of trouble getting off the ground for some reason. I think
it wants to be a space car.
I think because I made it so aerodynamically stable, it has a very hard time pitching up. And also because the landing gear is so near the back, but once it hits the edge of the runway, it takes off fine. You notice I updated Ferrum Aerospace, and you notice I don't have that shimmy shimmy shake going on in my planes anymore.
You do not. It's smooth as butter.
It is smooth as butter. And again, watching a space plane take off is kind of boring, so we're gonna go kind of quick through this part. I also added the new Kerbal Visual Enhancement that adds volumetric clouds. If you see there.
Oh.
You see how the clouds were a layer and not just a paper-thin sheet?
They were, never mind.
What were...
I wish I could remember the type, my cloud types from middle school science class. The wispy ones.
Cirrus clouds?
Cirrus, yeah, cirrus.
Cirrus clouds are... I mean, cirrus clouds are high up and are, like, made of ice. I
said never mind.
I don't remember. I want to say, I don't remember my cloud terms so well either. I don't remember what the big fluffy clouds are called. I know cumulonimbus.
Cumulus.
Yeah, cumulus. Because cumulonimbus is. I always remember cumulonimbus because that one character from Super Mario RPG, and it's fitting because those are the clouds that cause thunderstorms.
Hello. One of these days I'll actually.
One of these days, we'll recover Nate's hard drive and finish that. I mean, we were playing that on the Super Nintendo. So anyway,
I can play back to where we were.
These engines are starting to overheat, and you notice that we're kind of starting to pitch to one side. So I kick those off and kick on the rocket engines. And something happened in Ferrum that adds. I think they said they added lifting body mechanics. Which one of the things, if you look at a spaceship like the Space Shuttle, you'll notice it has very stubby wings that are pretty much only on the back, and those are for aerodynamic stability. And they don't look like they should be able to support the Space Shuttle for as huge as it is. And that's because the space shuttle employs a lifting body design, which is to say that the fuselage and the entire, well, as it states, the entire body of the plane generates lift. And that's one of the things that was supposed to be added to Ferrum. And I think it helps a lot. I don't know how well it reacts to non-stock parts, though, because this is made pretty much exclusively with the components from B9 Aerospace. One of the things I did notice is they increased the drag values for everything, so the amount of fuel I needed to get into space has gone up a lot. It used to take me about 8 minutes to get a space plane into orbit. I think now it takes me like 12 to 15.
Oh.
And I burn a bit more of my fuel to get there.
In-game minutes or?
Yeah, in-game.
Hour minutes. Okay.
In-game minutes. I'm doing this. Even when I'm not saying I'm doing this at fast forward, I'm still doing this at a minor fast forward because this plane is so complex that it makes the game slow down.
Is this the plane that crashed your computer?
No, that was one of my earlier prototypes. That was Dream Charger 3, I think. No, it was Dream Charger 2. Because that's the one whose wreckage exists just outside of the Kerbal Space Center. So now we're just kind of gliding into space, about to breach the airspace limit at 70 kilometers, and you can hear the space whales. This is
I can hear the space whales.
I don't know what this song is, but that's what people colloquially refer to it as, the space whales.
Huh.
And yeah, we just we set up. Well, we take a look at the planet here, and our Apple apps, and we kind of figure out what we need to do. Turn on the Kerbal alarm clock. We still have a countdown timer until. Law 501 is an asteroid that is going to come within 40 kilometers of Kerbin. You also notice that there's that question mark there?
Yeah, I see it.
That's an unidentified object that is really close to our planet out of nowhere.
What is it?
I don't know.
Is it aliens?
Maybe. Maybe it's some kind of weird pink-skinned people with 5 fingers and tiny heads.
Very tall. That sounds horrifying.
I know. Anyway, so we send Jeb out to do an inspection of the space plane, make sure nothing was damaged upon entry, and you can see how huge this thing is.
It's looking pretty good, honestly.
Yeah, it's looking in pretty good shape. We fly around.
Built a nice plane.
Yeah, no, the B9, V9, it's a very pretty package. You can see the atmospheric halo around the planet. We just passed a sunrise. And it's at this point when I'm inspecting the plane, I realized it didn't outfit it with any reaction control thrusters. So my plan to test it by, well, we'll get to that part in a bit. But,
I see the Big Dipper.
I don't actually know what the constellations that are set up out here are. To be honest, I think the game randomly creates a pattern of stars and galaxies, and I run into a problem here because I forget where the cockpit entrance is on this thing because there's no ladders or anything.
Oh no.
Also, it was by accident that I discovered some other air intakes. If you notice on the front of those wings, there's some air intakes that are the cylindrical things, but there's also those things with the V.
Yes.
And I didn't realize, I thought those were engine pre-coolers, and it turns out no, those are extra air intakes that you can mount in a linear fashion. And so I pulled the old exhibit and put air intakes on my air intakes so I can get air while I get air.
Well, I mean, you're in space and there's no air, so.
Yeah, so they don't help a lot in there. So anyway, in between that, we have created a new payload.
Hey!
Which I have needed to create a new launch vehicle using some of the new NASA parts that I unlocked, the super heavy lift parts. I don't remember what these are called. But there's also, you notice there's a fairing on this thing that is about the size of the entire launch vehicle.
Yeah. So, have you unlocked everything in this game?
Nope. I have so much to unlock. It is crazy.
There's so much to explore.
There is so much science to be done. You don't even know. You don't even know, sister. I also love the flame out effects on the rockets, that they have actually a unique kind of thing when they kick out just a little bit of flame at the end.
Yeah.
And also
yeah.
the new, and also the blue purple kind of flames coming out of the other rocket.
That's what I was checking out. What's it all about?
I think that's I'm trying to remember what fuel makes that kind of color of exhaust. I want to say it would be like a methane-based fuel. Or a methanol-based fuel, which is what they're using. That's an experimental fuel type they're actually using on new rockets to try and reduce a pollution footprint on the planet. Because right now we use one of the fuels we use is actually really clean. The main one we use is hydrogen and oxygen, which turns into water.
Yeah.
And then we can see the payload as the sun rises.
Yay.
And we can see the name of our vessel.
I see it.
The Bill Kerman Space Station.
Can you reenact the movie Sunshine and send a giant bomb into the sun?
I could probably build a vehicle that goes there and then is destroyed by the sun. Man, Sunshine.
I like Sunshine.
I like it. I like everything up until the third act. The third act's weird.
Yeah. I think I liked it, though, because I like weird things.
Yeah, it just doesn't quite fit the theme of the movie, and also there's some parts where they try to ratchet up the tension in ways that doesn't make sense. Why is the only way to shut down the computer to turn the computer on after it shuts down, to go into the liquid nitrogen and have to smash it? Like, why is that system like that? That's so inefficient. Movie, make me angry. With your
movie bad.
Movie, you make me so mad with your incongruities.
Well, that's Hollywood and space for you, you know?
Yeah.
What?
But that's not even space.
Science fiction. Did we ever watch Moon?
No, I don't think so.
Watch Moon. I like Moon.
All right.
We could probably reenact Moon. That would be a little
I don't actually know what that movie is. So you notice that this space station's outfitted with a whole bunch of docking ports that are the same kind as the one on the space plane. So my plan was originally to try and dock the space plane to this and make sure everything worked up. I realized I didn't put any reaction control thrusters on the plane, so docking it is going to be impossible.
Whoops.
So we can still conduct a test flight and make sure it lands successfully, because that was a problem with our previous plane.
Landing.
Yeah, it didn't do that so well.
No.
So I still have some fuel left over in that stage, but what I don't need it just hanging off the ass of my space station. So we'll just kind of leave that to orbit forever.
So riddle me this, Batman.
Yes.
Which would you say is more advantageous for you at the moment? A space plane or a rocket? Like, what are the pros and cons?
So the thing about space planes, well, within the rules I've set, there aren't any hard and fast rules in this game, even with all the mods I've installed. The rules I've set, space planes are reusable. So as long as I land it without crashing it or damaging it, as long as I have fuel to put back in it, I can send it back into orbit. Now, is the problem with rockets. So we're putting our space plane, and we're going to make sure our space plane even has enough fuel to get into the same orbit as our space station now. Because we want to make sure we can at least rendezvous with it, even if we can't actually dock with it.
Just pass by and wave.
Yeah, we're not even going to do that. Because I don't want to. It's going to take some time to rendezvous, and I have an asteroid that might crash into the planet soon. So yeah, the advantages of a space plane: it's single stage to orbit, so there's no waste, and reusability. Right now, though, I don't have enough parts. B9 Aerospace comes with things like inline cargo bays, and oh hey, there's that object again. It's apparently a Class B sized object.
What does that mean?
It's small-ish. I believe a Class B is between 4 and 7 meters.
Okay.
So we're gonna with our fine astronaut Jebediah having noticed that from orbit somehow with the instruments that we've placed on the space plane, I'll say.
With his keen eyes.
With his keen eagle vision. We will investigate. We will have our tracking stations look at that when we return to the planet. But yeah, so if I need to do I can't do a lot with the space planes right now because I don't have the cargo bays that I want, and I don't have powerful enough engines or anything like that. But I can use it to send guys to my space station, which is handy because otherwise I'd have to use So the thing about rockets is that they're super easy to fly. You just have to have enough power to beat your thrust to mass ratio. Which, honestly, like, if you just take enough rockets and put enough fuel, eventually you'll do that. And you can see me loading up the TAC fuel balancer there. I'm dumping all of my oxidizer because I only need that to power my rocket engines, because when the rocket engines are in space, there's no oxygen, so I don't need it. I need a separate oxidizing agent. But when I'm re-entering the atmosphere, that's just using extra weight, and I don't want extra weight when I'm trying to land a plane.
Yeah.
But yeah, so rockets, they're super easy because you just take a whole bunch of fuel, you take enough engines to get a positive thrust to mass ratio, and you just point that shit up at the sky and eventually turn it over and get an orbit going. The problem with rockets is that I believe it was the video the Three Rocketeers put it. Is that you are constructing a vehicle that requires like hundreds of thousands of man hours of work and has an effective lifetime measured in seconds. You have a vehicle that throws away entire pieces of itself to be destroyed.
So then why don't we just use space planes?
Because space planes are super complicated. In reality, we have yet to actually have the space shuttle was actually a space plane, but it was a vertical takeoff, horizontal landing space plane. It was still 2 stages to orbit. Because the solid rocket boosters we actually recovered and reused, but the space shuttle external tank was always destroyed. And that was actually one of the reasons why the space shuttle was so complicated, was we wanted to be able to reuse the engines on the space shuttle. So the space shuttle has an external fuel tank that it draws fuel in, and the space shuttle's external fuel tank is bigger than the space shuttle itself. But its engines are mounted on the back of the actual vehicle. And so that also means we have to do a whole bunch of weird stuff to account for how the center of lift is different from the center of mass, which is why the space shuttle's engines are at a weird angle. And if you ever watch the space shuttle take off, you'll notice the first thing it does is kick forward a little bit and then go up. And that's because of the space shuttle main engines. So now here, this is also why I'm glad that this thing has jet engines. Fun fact, the Soviet space shuttle, the Buran, actually had its own supply of jet fuel and had jet engines because its external tank actually had its own thrusters. The Buran was never used too much, though. It only had 1 orbital flight, and it didn't take anyone to space because it could be piloted robotically or remotely. So it had an external tank that had thrusters on it, which meant the thrusters were destroyed. Fortunately, the Russians are the best at building rocket engines in the biz. In fact, that's one of the problems with the NASA Roscosmos thing, is that we kind of fear that the Russians will stop supplying us with rocket engines. Because they are the best at making rocket engines, and also they're the best at making a certain kind of rocket fuel. I don't remember what its name is, but it's a very advanced form of what was called RP-1, which was what was used in the Saturn V. RP-1 is basically really, really refined kerosene, which is why when you look at if you look at a video of the Saturn V taking off, it has these really, really bright orange flames that release just acrid black smoke out the back. And that's
that can't be good.
I mean, it's about as bad as, I don't know, burning all that fuel. Really, the fuel that we're trying to get rid of the most is the hypergolic fuels, which I talked about in another one, because those create just absolutely awful, toxic, corrosive exhaust, and are themselves, the fuels themselves need to be treated like chemical weapons in handling. But they're the most effective rocket fuels we have. There's actually a lot of other work being done. In fact, the space shuttle, even though it used hydrogen and oxygen to take off, that was the contents of the external tank. It actually used, I believe, hydrazine, which is a hypergolic fuel, for its reaction controls and for the orbital maneuvering system. And the problem with that is that the space shuttle actually had to be decontaminated before anyone could handle it, or before anyone could step out, because any hydrazine it didn't use on orbit, it had to just dump. And so it was basically just kind of covered in toxic shit. So we're getting really close to the runway again. And I realize I'm way off target, so I'm not even going to try and compensate to land on the runway, because the surrounding area is actually really flat.
Spoil it for me, Matt. Are we going to survive this?
I guess we'll find out.
Damn it, Matt. It was such a pretty plane. I don't want anything to happen to it.
So at 600 meters up, we are now deploying the landing gear.
You worked so hard on it.
And we've killed the throttle, and we have lights on, because that makes it so easy to see.
The grass you're about to land on.
We're coming up. Vertical speed is under 10 meters per second.
Getting nervous. I don't know. It's looking good, like a graceful swan.
No stalling detected. Vertical speed is now 5 meters per second. 4, 3, and we touch down. And engage brakes, which are now on a different action group, so the plane doesn't flip over.
Yeah!
I will tell you, when I was doing that, I could hear my heart beating. I could hear my... So anyway, we went back to the tracking station after that, and we finally started tracking. This is an asteroid that we have. It has a periapse very close to the planet. I noticed it's moving away from its periapse. So we decided to zoom out a little bit after... I don't know, zooming in and seeing for some reason the icon's way off. So we zoom out, and it's going, but it's not quite gone.
Wow.
We appear to have captured an asteroid. So
wow.
Kerbal now has 3 moons.
That's awesome.
One of which, yeah. So go planet. I don't know how you did that.
Planet was like, I want that. It's mine.
I really don't actually know how you capture asteroids. So now, we didn't get any science from that. It's time to do more science finally.
Do the science. You know what's really funny, though, about that last... where you landed the plane and suddenly we talk about the asteroid? Mm-hmm. It's gonna sound like you made some weird sort of cut, because, like, you just immediately talk about something else. But no, that was all you. There was no help.
No, I had to talk about things as they happened. But yeah, no, that spaceplane landing was crazy.
Yeah.
So you notice we're building a really weird looking little vehicle here. We did get enough science to unlock the microstruts, which are helpful because I am going to build a very tiny lander.
Micro strutted out.
And in fact, I'm going to build 3 of them.
Whoa, whoa.
This party's about to get crazy.
So, there's no, like, once you build something, there's no copy and paste option.
There is, actually.
Alright then.
It's a little weird. So there is a copy and paste option. You hold Alt and you click, and that will copy all the parts. It's a little fidgety, though, especially if you're trying to copy parts, like, right off the command capsule, so sometimes you have to build things weird. So we are, in fact, building a base with a series of small landers on it. And I gotta fix all my staging. And then there's a part here that we cut after I make sure I need to have enough power on this, because we're going to land this on Minmus. So I need to make sure it has enough power that it can sustain our life support through the night. It also has 3 solar panels so that during the day it can charge. So yeah, Minmus Lab. So this is the Minmus Lab 1 base. and there's a point after this where I end up testing it, and test went successfully. Each of the landers actually has, even on Kerbal, has a thrust to mass ratio of like 2-to-1, even with the tiny engines I put on it. So they have, I think,
pretty powerful.
It's saying that each of those has like 1,500 meters per second of delta V. If I put that on Minmus, the thrust to weight ratio is going to be, I think it's like 15-to-1 or something. Like they can fly pretty high without using a lot of fuel. And you notice I'm putting those orange things on the side of each of the landers?
Yes.
Those are fuel ducts, which I can use with those are part of Kerbal attachment system. I can use those to put fuel lines between two vehicles that aren't connected and drain fuel. And I know I'm going to have fuel left over from the base because I have a big tank and Minmus is a pretty light planet. Yeah, I got such a huge tank. You don't even know, girl.
Yeah.
So we're going to put a shroud around this thing so we get aerodynamics. And then we don't want Jeb because he's our test pilot. So we're going to send Bob and Joe Moore and Danrick Kerman. Joe Moore because he is our foremost expert on what Minmus is. As you recall, he laid some flags earlier.
I do.
Collected science from the world.
He's been there.
And now, due to some shenanigans, he is also our first transsexual Kerbonaut.
Neat.
Yeah, as is Bob. And Dan, I don't like Danrick was probably always a woman.
Way to be awesome, ladies.
Yeah. So we can take this time because I remember I was going to talk with you about a subject that is relevant to both of our interests, that of women in space.
You should have just ended it at women.
Well, space is relevant to my interests. I also am also a fan of women.
They're all right.
They're pretty cool.
I'm down with them.
And some of my best friends are women. And I'm not sure what blew off there. I think it was one of the decouplers because the solid rocket boosters survived and the rockets survived. So I'm not sure.
So nothing important.
Yeah. So it was just some trash that broke off of some other trash. But actually, it was I'm trying to remember now. It was the Vostok 6 mission that actually had the first woman in space, Valentina Tereshkova. Mm-hmm. She took off in 1963. That was when and she was supposed to be. She was one of a handful of Russian women that were made honorary. I believe they were made honorary lieutenants in the Russian Air Force. Because of their training. And so she ended up becoming the first woman in space. I believe the first American woman would not follow would be Sally Ride in 1983.
Wow.
And that issue is because originally when NASA was selecting astronauts, they wanted to get astronauts from every field and every walk of life. So they wanted to have pilots, they wanted to have divers, they wanted to have like sub-captains, anybody who had been high up in the air or anyone who had been low in the water, anyone who had been into extreme environments or knew how to conduct themselves well. And then they realized that was a lot of people, and so the U.S. government said, just make it military test pilots. And so for a long time, NASA only recruited military test pilots because that narrowed the field down enough and they seemed the most in line with the instruments. However, at the time, women were not allowed to be, were not actually allowed to be pilots in the military since 1944. So for a long time, until I believe until like the mid to late 70s, women couldn't be astronauts in NASA because they only selected military test pilots and women couldn't be military test pilots. I believe it was in 78 that a lot of gender laws were passed, and women were actually allowed to do a lot of things they weren't before.
Women were actually allowed to do things.
Women were allowed to do things. There were female motorists, I hear.
I thought I saw a woman on the TV, but it turned out it was just a can of beans.
But yeah, and it turns out that actually prior to that, the NASA administrator at the time, whose name escapes me, I want to say it was Charlie Bolden, that would mean he's been an administrator for a very long time, so it's probably not him. Also, I'm trying to set up an encounter with Minmus, which is a colossal pain in the butt because Minmus is on a slope from the planet.
Yeah, I see.
And I don't want to do an inclination change because that'll waste a lot of fuel. But actually, NASA had been proactive, and actually, they had actually changed their policies to allow women astronauts. I think like 5 years before the government required it. And so Sally Ride was and also with the space shuttle, NASA put less emphasis on needing to have pilots because you only need 2 pilots to pilot the space shuttle, but it can hold 7 people. So you can bring in scientists. You can bring in scientists of all walks of life.
And they don't have to be too worried about actually piloting the thing.
Yeah, because you only need 2 people. You can have 2 people and 5 specialists. And I think my mom actually said when she had lunch with an astronaut at Houston, I want to say, and goodbye orbital insertion stage. And now we begin our trans-Minmusian burn.
Minmusian.
But yeah, my mom actually talked to one of the space shuttle pilots when she was having lunch with him, and she asked if he had ever been on any EVAs, and he said, "Oh no, I was a pilot. They needed me to get home." And so that's
just keep him strapped there, tie him to the turning wheel.
And so there's a funny story from Sally Ride. Then let me find the quote here. That
they don't actually put steering wheels in rockets.
So one of the things that Sally Ride talked about was that even though women were allowed in NASA, like there was still a lot of like gender typing, and like the men there didn't know exactly how to treat the women, and they had 5 female astronauts.
Place your open palm firmly on the buttocks to let her know she's doing a good job.
The woman is a fragile creature. So we're moving all these guys into the habitation module so they don't go crazy while they're taking 11 days to get there. But yeah, so like one of the things was when there were female astronauts added, the administration at NASA saw fit to let me find the quote. The engineers at NASA decided that women astronauts would want makeup, so they designed a makeup kit. A makeup kit brought to you by NASA engineers. You can only imagine the discussions amongst the predominantly male engineers about what should go in a makeup kit. And there is a discussion. So anyway, we skipped to actually getting to Minmus and making our orbital burn. But yeah, so there's an article. There's actually an article in the newspaper about how they presented the makeup kit to Sally Ride, and she rejected it, electing only to take I believe hair ties and some tampons.
Oh, that's not something you think about.
Anyway, we'll talk about.
Let's not talk about that.
We'll talk about more space periods, and also there might be some science next time.
Let's not talk about that next time.
Okay, we won't talk about space periods, but there will be science.